Stevenson right hand, left side, accelerates to the wing and into the corner for George.
Boom, baby! Paul George out at left corner.
Pacers 8 of 15 from range, and they now lead 98-84.
It is tip-off on an early Monday morning, a condensed version of tip-off. We'll fly through it at full speed, break down the film study of last night's Indiana blowout. Plus, we'll look at the latest coaching news. Kevin Love, the lead story in the NBA. It's all coming up. Today's tip-off. Pow. All right, let's hit it fast because I got limited time and I got stuff I want to get to for you. Hope you had a great weekend, all that good stuff, all that pleasantries, all the things that show you I care about you and you pretend you care about, that whole thing. Okay. So if you were to believe the media right now, guys, you would believe that we didn't interview anyone other than Adrian Griffin or we didn't talk to a single player at the Combine. Guess what? I promise you, neither is true. The organization under Dennis Lindsay has reached super stealth levels. Coaches' interviews are going on with whom I'm not certain. And I promise you, we sat down and talked with every single one of those players that we needed to. We may not have talked to, for all we know, Dante Exum and some of those because, though I would expect we did, in case their agent's playing shenanigans, but also if we win the lottery up tomorrow or something of that nature, we'll be able to get those guys in. So, but, I don't worry. Like the coaching search, Adrian Griffin got leaked out there. Otherwise, I think this coaching search is continuing. I think it's just being done very, very quietly. And then the same thing with all of the players. The huge news is that finally Minnesota looks like they are going to fold on this and that Kevin Love is going to get traded at some point. The difficulty here for Minnesota is that Kevin Love is supposedly desperately wants to go to L.A. and go to the Lakers. What I think is intelligent about this, if you're Minnesota, is if you start to leak a bunch of other teams that might be interested in getting Kevin Love. So this latest talk about the Knicks, who have, like, how would they possibly get Kevin Love? They have no draft picks. They would have to trade Carmelo. Like, you start to read some of these reports, and they're absurd. Now, Houston is out there as a possibility. They could probably trade Chandler Parsons and Omer Ashik. I'm not sure that's that good a deal. And the question then gets to be, can Minnesota put up enough news and make people believe that Kevin Love could head to the Warriors where he'd want to re-sign, head back to Portland where he'd want to re-sign, that the Lakers pull the trigger on draft night and trade their 6th pick of the draft to Minnesota for Kevin Love, or if the Lakers end up winning the lottery, how far are they willing to go? That's going to be the interesting gamble by the Lakers here. Is where are they willing to go? What are they willing to do in regards to getting Kevin Love, or do they believe they can wait a year in free agency? The feeling around the league is that no one is going to be willing to acquire Kevin Love unless they get a guarantee in some capacity that Kevin Love is going to sign a 5-year full extension. Should we do it? Here are the details on if we were to try to do it. It'd be pretty difficult for us to do right now. Kevin Love is making $15 million. So we would have to go probably put together some sort of deal that gets upwards of that. And my guess actually was what that deal becomes is probably to do it, just looking at the numbers, right? I mean, you just don't have to be that complicated on the numbers. You probably, Derek Favors' new deal doesn't kick into September 1. So I don't know. Actually, I got to check that. That's when he gets his first check. When does that classify as his salary, the new salary? And how does that work? Because he has the numbers. Ennis has $6 million, but Minnesota already has Pekovic, and Alec is earning $3 million, and the other choice is a sign and trade, which would be with Gordon Hayward, but Gordon Hayward would have to be willing to go to Minnesota, would be the first part of that, which he may not be willing to do. And the second part of that is you then have to trade a draft pick you just acquired, but which you've drafted because that's who you want. And then you do the deal with Gordon because you can't ask Gordon now if he's willing to go there. So it's a very complicated. The chances of the Jazz pulling this off are limited. The time for the Jazz to pull this deal off would have been if Minnesota was willing to play ball either last offseason or this trade deadline, and then that's what we get into is that at some point in this process we need to have enough guts to go get that guy and show him that the uh, what we're watching or what you're seeing here happen in Salt Lake City is worth being a part of, and the Jazz organization is worth being a part of. That's truly the next step in our process. Big news also that's been kind of came out quietly, but that the NBA will use centralized replay in New York City next season. That will have a huge impact. One, I do think that those officials were just trying to get those calls right last week, and they got both of the calls right, uh, or at least as right as they could have out of replay at that point. And this will change a little bit because now this replay comes centralized. It should be faster, is the concept. It's worked very well in the NHL, so they'll have centralized replay out of New York. The big news was Earl Watson saying that he wants to be the head coach of the Utah Jazz. I love Earl. I do think he'll be a good coach in this league. He's an incredible optimist. So I think he has the makeup of what there is to be a head coach. I don't think this is going to be the time or place for him to learn on the job. But on the other end, the Knicks are waiting to talk to Derek Fisher. Maybe there's a feeling that he's been around long enough. The trick on Earl is that Earl actually has a little bit of a reputation for unintentionally being a bit of a clubhouse lawyer. I mean, really, truly being a little bit of a clubhouse lawyer without meaning to be. He's got good intentions, but every now and then his brain is just flying. He's such a smart guy, and I think he causes a few of those issues without realizing it. Around the NBA, the general feeling is the coaching search has come to a halt until tomorrow with the with the lottery, excuse me. Misspoke. But I'm not sure I totally agree with that. The Wolves have interviewed Scott Skiles reportedly. Darren Wolfson is a good reporter doing a nice job covering Minnesota stuff, says no Skiles and no Lionel Hollins. I keep hearing a bunch of D-League route names that we've talked about is what Minnesota's going to do. Flip came from that kind of environment. But the latest name that's circulated that gets interesting is Minnesota is Sam Mitchell, former Raptors head coach. He doesn't follow any pattern by which is usually successful. First-time head coach, not particularly successful. Now trying to be a head coach second time, but he does have Minnesota ties. He does have Flip Saunders ties. Knicks are supposedly going to wait until Derek Fisher is done with the playoffs. The Brian Shaw thing I keep talking about has circulated, but what I heard recently is one of the problems is you can only trade. I didn't realize this. I guess I did, but I didn't think about it. You could only trade draft picks and cash for a coach, and so therefore the Knicks have almost nothing they can offer till 2019, I think, because they've moved all of their draft picks already, which is what makes some of the Kevin Love discussion somewhat, ridiculous. But that's never actually stopped anyone ever before when talking about the Knicks. No one ever logically they just put the Knicks in the mix of it because everybody would love to go to New York, except for anybody who's ever been a free agent: LeBron James, Steve Kerr, etc. All right. Finally, Lionel Hollins being talked about in Cleveland. Where does Nate McMillan fit into this mix? He's with Indiana right now. He's been with Vogel, been with the Storm. Great offensive coach at Portland. Poor defensive coach. Super slow coach. We'll see on that. Some of the assistants we've mentioned. Bob Byer, who's in Charlotte, suddenly being talked about going to Detroit to be Van Gundy's number one assistant. Nick Nurse, who's in Toronto, being talked about going to Kerr to be one of his primary assistants. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, let's go to film study, if we may. I do not have much time. I got to get the kids here in about 3 minutes. So why was Indiana so fabulous offensively? I'm going to start in the first quarter. And at the 9:03 mark. Oh, wait, no, that's third quarter. I'm going to start in the second quarter on a West miss. No, I don't think that's right either. Something's wrong on my notes, by the way. If you can't tell that I'm suddenly flustered. Oh, I know what I'm starting on. I'm starting on a George Hill 3, which somehow disappeared from my Here we go. My notes. All right. I got to be quick on this, as I said. So let's go to the screen share. They are running their pick and roll, and they are running all of it from the top. They ran pick and roll top all night long. So here's George, penetrates a little bit, nothing there. Now they calmly get into their set. The amount of time that they, and I, of course, picked the wrong play. The amount of time that they did last night where they got things late in the shot clock was really awesome. They were able to create opportunities, and you saw it on the back cut if you watched the game, the back cut by Paul George or David West on LeBron James late in the shot clock. They're very calm.
Coach me, coach against
no
me.
layups.
Yeah.
So here's the first one I was going to show you. This is what they just lived on. They kind of look around. Here comes, it's an early high pick and roll. And what Miami, because they have lack of size, they don't play the drop the big. They play two guys trap the ball. And what Indiana was able to do in numerous different ways was whenever the ball got trapped, the ball handler made a quick decision whether they could beat the trap or the big slipped into the middle of the free throw line, got a pass, and then suddenly it was 4-on-3 or 3-on-2 from that point, and they killed them all night. In this case, Paul George splits the double team because Chris Bosh doesn't play it aggressively and tightly enough, and now here comes Paul George, and this play is over. It is now a 4-on-3. The big drops in to help on George, and George Hill buries the three. They did this time and time and time again throughout the ball game. Let's go to the third quarter where they do it with a little variation. I mean, it's not always quite as obvious as what I just showed you there. This one was more of a quick hitter off to the side, but they came in beautifully prepared for the Miami style
like Jeff
defense here's a quick one on the left side. So Paul George has it. Here's the pick and roll again. They slide these guys over to the right side. And what's going to happen? High pick and roll. Paul George comes to the right side, and Chris Bosh is going to step out and follow Paul George as is because this is the Miami's trapping style. It just doesn't work all night. They're going to have to switch or do something different without any size. So here it is. There they trap it. Paul George quickly gets it to David West, and if you look, David West is the only one standing on the left side of the floor. George Hill's actually not spaced out correctly, but he's getting there. Stevenson's at 3, and Hibbert's down by the rim. And there it is. Quick hopper for David West. I mean, that's just so easy. And they have just seen it enough and know enough about what is coming that it's not a problem. Here's one, and this is actually not going to be a basket. This is a miss, but this was the best I could find of an example of what was going on all night. Sometimes I don't care if they make it. It's the end.
And David.
So here it is going to be again. This time it's Paul George gives to Stevenson. Now, and this is what's unique about Indiana, and probably a model for us to think about a little bit as the Jazz, is they run this. We've watched this now be run with George Hill. We've watched it be run with Paul George. They run it with just about everyone. So here's David West right here. This one doesn't even have very good floor spacing. Setting the pick. LeBron will slide out to stop Stevenson because that's what Miami's defense does. They actually look very similar to the way we defended this in the first half of the year before we made our change, and about as effective. And so here it comes. West calls for the pick. Hill and George space. This time they do it with a little variation. And this is a simple fake action right there to get LeBron lower than the pick. Now Stevenson comes back to get it. LeBron gets off the pick. Bosh and James go to the ball. Beautiful pass as West, first of all, so fundamentally solid, runs through the lane, opening up so no defender can get over his shoulder. He actually misses the short shot. But you can just see they sliced him, and by the time West catches that, it's a 3-on-4 or 4-on-3 at that point. All right, that is our film study. That is our tip-off. I apologize, it's condensed, but parenting calls. See ya.